Okay. As I said, Josh has asked if I would. We'll talk a little bit about kind of my background as we get started, but I just wanted to set the stage in the sense of, in today's world. I mean, have you ever watched the news or listened to some folks talking, or even I guess maybe not a lot of us are still working, but HR meetings and so forth at your office. And you walk away and you say, "You got to be kidding." Or in the words of our favorite movie, Christmas Vacation, Eddie saying, "Are you serious, Clark?" Because there's a lot of confusion and so forth in the world today, and how we reconcile that with our Christian faith, how we minister to folks, how we share the gospel, are all parts of what it means to be a Christian in this cultural moment. I attended high school and college, as many of you did, during the late 60s, early 70s, so I was certainly familiar with social unrest and demonstrations and counterculture and a lot of weirdness. But I got to admit, in the last 10 years, it's even outstripped what I had experience in dealing with, and I had no real frame of reference. I mean, how do you even talk to people? And this is not. Back in the 60s, whenever I was facing this, and I was in college, and I grew up in a good Christian home, and didn't smoke, drink. I didn't even dance, go to movies, all of that kind of stuff. So I went to the University of Florida, which is one of the national party schools. I joined a fraternity and had my head blown off, basically, taking the science classes, all of the philosophy and so forth, and it shakes your faith. I mean, I had, and possibly all of y'all have too. I mean, I had to struggle for a period of time whether I believed there was a God or not, and those were dark times for me. And so I went home, and I was talking to my mom and dad, and they just weren't equipped to deal with stuff like that. So I went to my pastor, and he said, "Well, Jim, you're just thinking too hard," and that didn't help me out a lot. So fortunately, I was in the bookstore. I ran across a little spindle of InterVarsity Press, and there's a book. Actually, I wasn't even attracted to the book. I saw the little picture of Francis Schaeffer. I don't know if any of y'all know him or not, but he was a philosopher. What struck me was, why would anyone name their son Francis? And I saw the book, The God Who's There, and it saved my life, basically. But he talked about worldview and how you approach life and so forth. And in this time, there really wasn't, I didn't know where to turn, so I went to I went through the Colson Fellows program. I don't know if y'all remember Chuck Colson or not. Most prominent relative to his prison ministries. But he also, the other part of his organization is the Colson Center on Christian Worldview. And so I joined that, and they took the program. It was about 10 months of, we went through about 15 books. You had weekly exercises, bi-weekly videos, and then every month we had about a 3-4 hour meeting to discuss things. So I think Josh knew that, and since the church, these are difficult topics to talk about in church, quite honestly. But I think what Josh knew that I had taken this, and I said, I'll be glad to share what I've got that people may or may not be in their comfort zone, but let's talk about it and we'll see. So at the outset, I'll acknowledge that some of the folk of y'all will listen to this and say, that's really interesting and I want to learn some more about it. And then there are some folks that will say, well, that's just a bunch of gobbledygook. I check their watch pretty frequently. And then others will find it disturbing. And I don't mean it to be that way, but these are disturbing times. And I think one of the things that as the church we need to be, especially as we've got children, and more specifically in this group, grandchildren, that we're trying to help guide. A lot of the guardrails that we used to depend on in culture no longer exists. And that's one of the reasons that we see some of the things we do. So we'll get through some of this stuff. There will be, as I said, I titled it, I started to title it just the Finding Our Way in a Post-Christian World, but if we're really going to be honest about it, it's a post-rational, post-truth, post-modern, we're now moving into post-postmodern, post-literary, post-secular. So essentially Western culture, much of the foundations that is being undermined and challenged. That's not to mean that it's that's just the way that the culture is now. And so where does the church fit into all of this? And to start with, you've probably heard this little parable, I guess is what you call it, but give you this little story just as an illustration. There are two young fish swimming along in the school of fish, and they pass the professor fish. And so they swim along, and the professor says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the little two student fish said, "It's fine." And then swim down a little bit more, and one of the fish turns to the other and says, "What the heck is water?" And the point of that being that what we live in, we take for granted so many of the assumptions and values and so forth, to the point that they become invisible. And right now, what's going on is there is another culture that is being formed that has very different water, so to speak, than what we're used to swimming in. And that's what we'll explore. So I'm going to focus a bit on identity. There's a whole range of topics, but identity seems to be kind of the watchword of much of that at the moment. And from this, all of this stuff is related, but we'll talk about the changing meaning of identity. We'll go through some of the philosophers. This is where people's eyes typically glaze over, but you can't understand what's going on without understanding what the ideas are. And so we're not going to go into that real deep, but you need to at least understand the concepts and why people say the things that they say. So start out with today's questions. Society's questions today is, how can I know what is real, and what does it mean to be a human, especially an authentic human? And these are not new questions. I mean, they're around, but because of changes in science and technology and philosophy, psychology, and so forth, the rules of the game have changed a bit. But before we go any forward, what how do you know what truth is? How in your mind, what is reality? If you're trying to tell somebody what is real or in your mind, how do you go about doing that?
Check with AI first.
Pardon me?
Have to check with AI first.
Check with AI first, and we'll get to that too. But that's an interesting concept because if you can't there's a difference between how we think of what reality is, what truth is, how we understand and discover truth, and what is prevalent in the new society. Also, kind of dumb sounding, but what does it mean to be human? What is the self? Who are you as a person? You just kind of touch yourself, but as we start getting into AI and other things, and if you're we are now having artificial valves put in. You've got pacemakers. Are you not human when they start adding? That doesn't do too much to you. But when they talk about maybe, are you your thoughts? Are you your body? Are you your history? Are you, if you were grew up in a different culture, would you still be you? So, a lot of folks wrestle with this now, and the reason why will become a little more obvious when we chat a bit. But I thought this is what essentially reality is in the post-Christian mind. Reality or truth is not something we discover. Typically, what we think about truth and reality being is something out there that we're going to learn. We science is a matter of uncovering things, that there's a reality out there. That's not the way that is viewed now. You may think this is stupid, but as we get into some of the philosophers and so forth, we'll understand how they get there. But it's something that we construct mentally. Reality, and that's what, so when you're talking about virtual reality and so forth, that's different. That's something that's constructed. But they are now taking that much further in terms of how reality itself is dealt with. And again, we'll talk some more. Morality is not built into human nature. It is individually or socially constructed. So whereas we think that there's an intrinsic right or wrong, there's a natural law within every person because we're created in the image of God. They don't believe that. That is something that society has trained you. Your Christian doctrine has trained you. That's not you, which gets back to who are you. It's something that you actively do. Knowledge or truth comes not so much from studying and mental acumen, but the will. More specifically, the will seeking power or significance. Different cultures, we know, therefore have different truths because they have different guidelines for reality or for their relationships. So truth is relative and not objective. Today's society is not so much interested in science because in the postmodern view, they're actually attacking science as constructed, and constructed is the big word. In fact, you may have heard Christian deconstruction, people that are exiting out of Christianity by deconstructing what they've learned and so forth. The material universe is deemed void of any significance. The only significance is what we make from the physical. So if you are swimming in the little school of fish and Professor Fish drives by, these are the kind of the presuppositions that you're going to have, and they're disturbing. But it's what drives a lot of what we see going on now. So we're going to step back and basically look at what is begin from, okay, what is it that, regardless of all these things that I just said, what is it that people really have to know or deal with to flourish? You have to, at some point, you're going to want to know origin, where did I come from, meaning, why am I here, morality, how should I live, what's right and what's wrong, and destiny, what happens when I die. Not everybody has those on top of mind every point in your life, but when I was back in college and I was faced with what I was, these became critically important. Because if there is no God, what are you left with? And that in essence is what the culture is now. So you need to answer these questions. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. Those may be intellectually satisfying, but there's more to life than that. And so basically what motivates people and what drives much of what we're going to be talking about is identity, meaning, and community. They have questions of identity. Who am I? Why am I here? What does it mean to be fully human? What is myself? Who am I as a person? What do I really believe? As individuals, we need to even think about, apply this to our Christian lives. Do I really believe this? Does it really change my life? So questions of identity are top of page, but you also have to have meaning. So what? Why am I here? What's the point of life? And in a couple of just little quotes here, in growing numbers, today's youth believe that life has no meaning, no purpose, therefore their life is meaningless. And along with that, the CDC reports the prevalence of depression and hopelessness has doubled over the last 30 years. So it's not like, if they're going to cast, and this is what really was the crux of the issue with me when I was trying when I was in college, is, okay, there is no God. What do I do now? And depending on your spiritual or psychological sensitivity, that's a very, very, very dark question, because there isn't anything. That's why the word construct is so prevalent, because you have to construct yourself. Isn't it interesting how they wanted to get away from God, and yet now they've become God? Because they now have the responsibility to do that. Do you feel that's a good thing would you like to do that? That's what they're dealing with. But the third thing that you have to have a fulfilled and flourishing life is community. We are made for community. You remember the Imago Dei, the Genesis 4, we're created in the image of God. We bear His image. So we're built for community. And the sense of belonging is much of what affirms our identity. If you're cast out by your parents, or your child doesn't abandons you or whatever, what does that do to you? Does that cause you to flourish? If you're in the business and your boss is constantly deprecating or conversely building you up, does that community effect? Most people leave a job because of their boss and the way that they're treated. So community has the ability to negate identity and meaning. So if you've worked through those two things and you're in a community, a group, your social network doesn't affirm or support you, it will pull you down. So so we need to. If there is a pop quiz that I have before you leave, I want you to remember the 4 ultimate questions and the 3 intrinsic existential motivations. So it's origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Those are the fundamental questions. And then the existential guidance is what? Identity, meaning, and community. Okay? So what we'll do now is we'll delve a little bit more into each of those elements, and we'll start going in layers, just trying to help understand where these philosophers, and I'll use the philosophers. They're basically ideas, some of which have mutated from what the original philosopher had, but nonetheless, they'll give you a point of reference if you're interested. By the way, none of this is anything that I have in the dark recesses of my study and so forth have come up with. These are things that I had to learn, again, and I'll give you a couple of references just so I don't forget it. This book is probably the most readable, Post-Christian by Gene Veith. Very good book. The one that I am basing a lot of this on is Carl Trueman's Strange New World. This is the readable edition. This is The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self by Carl Trueman. This is the more academic. It's still readable, but if you're not used to footnotes and a lot of cross-referencing philosophers, and so it's a little more difficult to get through, but it's certainly a very good book. And then finally, Stephen Hicks explaining postmodernism. Good books. So what we'll talk about is the transformation of identity, how these, what factors, came about to drive them. We'll look at the complexity of modern identity and understanding how that has changed, how science and some of the discoveries have altered the conversation a bit. The newer term for worldview is social imaginary. I just throw that in so that if you're reading stuff, it'll make some sense to you. But if you read Carl Trueman's books, he's big on that. And then finally, what are the implications for society as this develops? Okay, key themes. Expressive individualism, politicization of identity. Everything is politicized now, and we'll talk about why that is, probably next week. And then the sexual revolution. That started in our time. And quite honestly, this all are seeds that were planted back in the 60s and 70s, and we're just seeing the ultimate fruit. This is the blossom and the aroma of the blossoms. But it's amazing. Francis Schaeffer, if you read his book or watch the little movie video sort of thing on how shall we then live, it's spot on. And he wrote that in the 60s, because I read it. So, I think it had just come out. It was 67, 68. And then the Shall We Then Live was probably in the 70s. Yeah. But it was
You're looking at it and you're going, no, there's no way that can happen. Everything all of a sudden
spot on. So expressive individualism, and again, some of this I'll repeat because it's probably not going to sit well with you. It certainly didn't sit well with me when I was going through this the first time. But it emphasizes the importance of personal expression in the individual's unique identity in society. So expressive individualism is a person that's trying, since they don't believe in God, reality is something to be constructed. That is what they are saying. This is me. I am telling you who I am as a person. There's no imago Dei. There's no church community. I'm telling you who I am. So expressive individualism is a big deal. Just check that. Yeah, think about, as community helps shape us, and community helps us to understand how to, again, we're built for community. That's part of our, the Trinity is an expression of divine community. And so, but anyway, we're going to get into those things a little more as well. But politicization of identity, this is a concept that political forces or political constructs, because everything's construct, rather than intrinsic truth, influence social dynamics and individual behavior. So the politics, you can see just from the last presidential election to this presidential election, you can see a pretty big change in terms of what politics imposes or defines. You have DEI, that's the law of the land, and then you have DEI is verboten. And each of those push agendas down. So the point of this theme is that the politics of the society impact you. And then, of course, the sexual revolution is a result of this and some of the confusion that comes with the loss of God. The traditional view of identity get formed. Basically, it's heavily dependent on your family, the family inputs. Most of us grew up with some sort of a religious background and input into what the moral compass needed to be and what proper actions were and so forth. And then the community itself, many times that was the church, but if you played sports, I mean, those have enormous impacts. If you were in the band, if you were in a social club, or something, those things all play into shaping you. Those are forces. Now, do you have any influence in what you accept or reject? Certainly. And so, in one sense, what the New Society said, well, you construct your reality, you construct your identity, don't you? So, but there's, everything is an all or nothing. There's no intermediate understanding of things. Modern view is that internal construction of identity, we've talked about that, we'll continue to talk about it, emphasize that identity is shaped from within, that rather than succumbing to external forces, because there is no truth out there, you are responsible for developing your own internal construction of identity. And therefore, personal emotions have a pretty big part to play. So when Nancy talks about, especially teens, I mean, do you remember what it was like in your, 12 to 20 period? Trying to figure out, trying to figure out who you are? Isn't that kind of what that is? So your emotions are all over the place. Well, if you never can outgrow that, you can kind of see the confusion that starts. And then as you define yourself, you then, you are affirming you're being the authentic you. And so there is an empowerment that comes with that. Yeah, the matrix is actually not a bad, that was brought up in a couple of the sessions we had at Colson, just as an illustration. Because, again, these thoughts have been around for quite a while. And, again, there's, how people review reality and truth impact these things a lot. And so what the thinkers that we're going to talk about here, Rousseau, Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx, they were the ones that probably were the most impactful in terms, and we've got a bunch of others, but in terms of identity, these are probably the ones that are most influential, and they challenged successfully in many ways tradition, and they were the ones that provided the, if you want to call it, the intellectual foundation to allow this fluid identity concept. Because if you go to, if you're on college campuses, and I spent probably more time in college than I probably should have, but there was, this is nothing new. This is I remember when my daughter, she got her degree from UF in English. And I was excited because I never really studied the great authors of the, 17th century in England, even Shakespeare, all of these, so I was excited. I was going to kind of follow along, but they don't, it may be labeled in the course title as English literature of the 17th, 18th century, but it is not. It is all of this, all of the new philosophers, new thinkers, the oppressed writers, and so forth. So, I mean, this has been going on since the 60s. So, yeah, all truth is relative. We define our own truth. I mean, how many times have you listened to Oprah? What does Oprah say? My truth, I don't listen to her, but I remember that back in the day. When she had but yeah, there is truth is not a. It's a contrived. Proposition. Kind of hard to believe, isn't it? But it helps you understand why you can wind up where we're winding up.
No truth, there would be no judgment.
Oh no! Well, we'll get to the judge. Judgment is a function. We'll talk about this down the road. A function of the oppressor oppressed. There's only judgment. It's power dynamics. It's that's the white black oppression. That in as it regards truth. People are just imposing on you. Science changes all the time. They say this is the truth. This is what, and Christians are stupid because and then 100 years later, that whole theory, back in, I mean, one of my heroes is Isaac Newton. I mean, he was just an amazing man, actually a Christian. But when he formalized the laws of physics and invented calculus, everything became known. It was a very rational world. And so truth was absolute, that if you were big enough and knew the position and speed of every particle in the universe, you could calculate what the future would be, or turn the clock back and calculate what the past was. And that tended to give way to support deism, which is God created something, but then just kind of step back and let it run. Now, with the advent of quantum theory, quantum dynamics, and so forth, everything is uncertain. That there is, light is both a particle and a wave. That. Pardon?
And a liquid. You see that article? To turn light into a liquid.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, E equals mc squared. The whole point of that is just showing that the relationship between energy and light and particle is so that that. Well, we won't get into the physics, but you get into entanglement topics where the double slit theory, where a electron particle goes through the slits, and you can change what the detection limits are, and they will change the wave pattern just by observing it. You didn't do anything, you just looked or you didn't look, and the ultimate. So there's a lot of paradox in this, and it winds up that you lose faith in what you can know, and that's where that comes from. So Rousseau, just to stay a little bit on track, Rousseau is the one that you may have heard, the men are born free but everywhere in chains, says that humans are naturally good and that society corrupts them. He actually, as I recall, his not a very pleasant man as a person, but his prominence came. He won an essay contest in France, which the topic was, with the Enlightenment, with the advances in science and so forth, are they supporting increased morals and goodness or not? And all of the people that were answering said that it was an increase, a betterment of morals and society as a result. And he said absolutely not, and then went on to support that. He won the contest, and then his was on from that. But basically, he says that humans, the noble savage, humans are born right, and as society imposes the structures on them, they lose their personhood, they lose their happiness, and have much more inner conflict as a result of the society values. And then he's the one that started the talk of authenticity, promote the importance of, which means that you respond in accordance to what your inner feelings of right and wrong are, and not what society tells you that they are. Thus, the outcome of that is that the true identity and emotions, our deepest emotions, are the foundations of our true identity, not our bodies, not our minds. These things that we feel, these emotions, these inherent emotions, distinct from society's pressures, are what make us us. So he's defining what personhood is, what the self is, and that societal norms and conformity create a disconnect between who we are essentially as people and how we behave, and that if we're going to be complete people, we need to do that. Rousseau's ideas promote the importance of personal expression and the formation of identity, encouraging individuals to embrace authenticity. I wrote, as I was writing that, I think, was it Francis Sinatra? No, Sammy Davis Jr.
Frank Sinatra, and I did it my way.
Yeah. But anyway, I Want to Be Me.
Oh, yeah.
That was whoever, that song just popped into my mind. So how does that relate to the expressive individualism we talked about? Rousseau's impact is profound in that expressive individualism, which you will see in the culture today, is the importance of personal beliefs and emotions and shaping your identity. Authenticity is achieved by acting outwardly in according with one's inward feelings. Again, my purpose in repeating some of this is just to kind of help set it in how different this is from what we're used to ordering our life by. So Rousseau's influence challenged societal roles. Much of his work is fundamental to even current educational programs, and you'll see it. Now, he also was essentially the architect of the French Revolution, and without going into that, indirectly responsible for the Reign of Terror of Robespierre. I think we can get through one more. Nietzsche. Everybody's heard of him, right? He was a German that pronounced that God is dead. I think that's probably what he's remembered most for. He was the Superman. The will to power is another one of his memorable statements. But his view, and again, we'll skipping over an awful lot of stuff, but he challenged the moral codes that external authority is not proper because he recognized that there was the Enlightenment had provided a disconnect between God, and once that's gone, he was the one that recognized that society, quote, Christian society, continued on as a result of the structures that had been built. But once the power, the understanding of God was there, he was the one that said, he wasn't saying God is dead. I mean, he was an atheist, but he was essentially saying God is dead in his writings to draw attention to the fact that a lot of what your society's norms were based on the fact that God is alive. You've denied God, which is why I said and I can't recall the exact words, but God is dead and we have killed him, we and everyone, and so he was just the one that drew the hard line rational deduction from what having God not a part of the universe do. So.
But he's the one also that said that taken to its fullness, things get progressively darker to where you return the lights on.
Yeah, that's part of the same. Yes, that's part of the same writing. Creation of individual values. This is the Superman, Supermensch, that Adolf Hitler read Nietzsche and believed that the German society was the ones that would create the perfect race. And then with that, he had, again, following on the impact on identity by reshaping conventional views of identity, emphasizing personal responsibility and defining oneself. He was not as much on the internal feelings thing, but recognizing objectively if there is not a God, it's up to us as individuals to establish our way forward. So we had that. And then we'll stop here. The personal will and power shape identity. Again, this is the will to power. You're going to hear that an awful lot. It will also come up as we talk about Marx and his impact. But again, along with Rousseau, they're reinforcing the fact that it's up to us, up to the individual, to reject the norms that society puts on you and to form your own right and wrong, your own goodness, and define yourself. We're over our time. Thank you for let me just pray us out real quick. Father, again, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you did create us for your purposes, and our lives do have meaning, and we can believe in you. Our trust can remain steadfastly in you. Pray that you would help us to be good stewards, good Christians, good witnesses of all the blessings that we enjoy, and give us a great week this week. For asking Jesus' name.